RPG Day 2023. Today is day 29. I have almost made it completely through the month. So today is the most memorable encounter. This was the one that I thought was going to kind of stump me, I think. I was really not entirely sure what I was going to do. And then I suddenly realized it would be a good opportunity to talk about Dungeon Crawl Classics. If any of you haven't come across Dungeon Crawl Classics, it uses funky dice. It is a huge tome of a book. Um, it's actually moderately simple. It's got some nice tweaks to D&D style OSR D&D style play, but it really is its own thing. So I am going to talk about the people of the pit. I'm not going to talk about the whole adventure because that would give spoilers. However, there is towards the end, as you can see behind me, a a big encounter with lots of huge tentacles and cultists, and you've got to try and rescue people, etc., etc. And on its own, the adventure's really good. The encounter is probably not as written particularly stellar. However, I wanted to talk about when Ollie ran it for us, how it went. So it had taken us a couple of sessions, because we don't play very long sessions, to get through to the end of this. We'd done some dungeon crawling, we'd found weird things out, we'd managed to rescue villagers from the cultists, etc. And then we got to this cavern. We had enough time to kind of peer around, and we were watching what was evidently going to become human sacrifice being prepared. So the reason I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about DCC was to talk about the magic rules in DCC, which I think are one of my favorite things in any game. So every single spell, it's the reason the book's so thick, every single spell has at least one page dedicated to it. And it has the level of the spell, it has I will show you. So this is a spell called Choking Cloud. It's a first level spell, has a range of 50 foot, and various other bits and pieces. So far, so D&D. It has a manifestation that you can roll for to see how it appears when it happens. It has corruption. If you roll really, really badly, you can end up with corruption. So you can end up with permanently having a problem where whenever you breathe, anybody near you has to make a save against it. You can get certain types of creature are able to detect the caster automatically. These are kind of permanent effects of having cast this spell and having it go really, really wrong. Equally, sometimes if you cast it and it goes really wrong, you can end up with a misfire, and bad stuff happens to you and those around you. That's all kind of quite nice. I can think of kind of links. The corruption, maybe not, but I can think of stuff in other versions of D&D that are similar to this. What makes it unique is that every time you cast a spell, you roll, and there are modifiers to that roll. And you can see if you roll a 1, you lose the spell for the day. Like D&D, it just vanishes from your mind. It fails, and then you make a luck test to see whether you get corruption, whether your patron is angry with you, whether it misfiles, etc. On a 2 to 11, you lose the spell. If you roll a 12 or above, at that point the spell goes off. You don't lose it, so that's unlike D&D. But depending on what you roll, depends on what happens. So, like, if you just about make it, if you roll a 12 or a 13 with modifiers, one designated target, in this case, is engulfed in a caustic, stinking cloud, 1d4 rounds, -1 penalty to all rolls. The cloud follows the target, it can't escape. Yada, yada, yada. It's all right. So, in this case, we had an elf who had Choking Cloud as his spell. Um, so we decided, okay, that would be a useful thing to do. So one of the other things about Dungeon Crawl Classics as a magic system is wizards can sacrifice attributes. They can put more than just the spell on the line. They can um, pour themselves into it. So they can take a hit to strength, to constitution, to those kinds of things. So we had a discussion with the GM and said there is a magician in the party and there is an elf in the party. Now only the elf knows the spell. Is the magician able to sacrifice his attributes as well as the elf in order to power the spell? And Ollie said, yeah, that made sense to him. It's got an upside, but it's also got a downside because if things don't go well, you know, two characters are also in trouble. So we poured quite a bit of spell burn into Choking Cloud, and we had a plan that we'd try and we'd sneak in, we'd set up some diversions, we'd cast Choking Cloud, and then we had various plans depending on how well that went. We rolled really well. I think off the top of my head, we rolled an 18 or a 19 on the dice. And by the time we'd got all of the various bits that we'd put in there and the amount of spell burn we'd done, we ended up with a roll of over 30. So if we scroll down here at over 32, which it was, the caster calls down 3 toxic clouds of unmatched lethality. For each cloud, he can choose a size ranging from a single target up to a 30-foot radius. The clouds can be targeted anywhere within 500 feet. This is not the normal stuff you'd get in a first level spell in a D&D game. The clouds come into existence instantly and remain for 1d4 turns. Each target within the clouds must make a fort save or be killed immediately. Now, I'll come back to that fort save in a second because that's also quite key. Those that survive suffer a -6 penalty to all rolls, take 10 points of damage each round from the toxic gases. Caster can direct the clouds at will without concentrating. They can move up to 50 foot per round at his command. So I will reiterate here, this is 1d4 turns, a turn being uh, 10 minutes, I think, as opposed to 50 foot per round. So this is here for a long time. Now, the other thing that I thought I'd mention is the fort save. The what you have to roll for the fort save is the same number that you scored on the spell. And we rolled over 30, which meant that anybody within any of the clouds needed to roll that number on a d20 plus their normal modifiers, or otherwise they'd be killed instantly. We rolled that roll and we basically just narrated the encounter as we sculpted the clouds around anybody we didn't want to kill, and everybody else just went down instantly. So it wasn't, in some respects, the big epic end that maybe we were expecting. You expect like a big boss encounter to go on for ages. I think we got to the encounter at the end of the previous session, and Ollie very wisely said, okay, we'll stop there. Next set, we'll do a bit of planning because you guys have got time to look at the situation and work out what you're going to do. But we'll start the big boss encounter next session. The big boss encounter lasted about 5 minutes and it lasted about 10 seconds after we rolled the dice for the first time. And so it wasn't the big epic combat, but it was something we're still talking about that actually we might not have been had it turned into a traditional big epic combat. It was very OSR in as much as you don't start a combat unless you have to, and then you stack the deck as much in your favor as possible. And that's fair because the encounter itself is deadly. This was really really good fun, and it just cemented to me, and I think to the other players, and I think kind of once Ollie got over it, it probably cemented to Ollie as well quite how good the game was and quite how much fun it was. and it's something where at some point soon, alongside all the other games we've said this about, we really, really need to do a proper campaign of DCC. It is deadly. It's really deadly. Um, and it gives a very, very different experience. I think a lot of people that don't play it or don't play it very often have only played the zero level funnel, which is you start with every person starts with 4 or 5 zero level characters. You run them through a death trap dungeon. You come out at the end, and the characters that have survived that, they then become first level, get a class, and they become your character. And that's always fun. I've had a lot of fun. We've run a couple of things like that. But running it above zero level, running it with actual classed characters is so much fun and very, very different. So yeah, I think that was I think that's like possibly the most memorable encounter I've played in. Although it was short, although it didn't go the way that anybody really was expecting, um, it was glorious, and it really showed you how Dungeon Crawl Classics works. Um, so yeah, really good fun. I felt a bit guilty at first for Ollie, who like obviously built the encounter or read the encounter up, worked out what was going to happen, done all the prep, and then bang, it was over, and we were suddenly victorious. But it was a really good game, and it was a lot of fun. And I think in 10 years' time, it's going to be one of those stories that keeps coming out, which is always what you want. So yeah, I have 2 more of these to do, and then for the first time ever, I've managed the whole month of August. So I'll talk to you tomorrow.